Greetings, everyone. Today we're going to learn how to create an Alexa skill using MIT App Inventor coding environment. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a game called Number Guessing Game that Alexa will play with us as the users. What I would like to do before we go any further is quickly demonstrate what the final product is going to look like and what the game is so that everybody knows what we are about to play. So here is my testing environment where I'm going to say, I'm going to ask Alexa, ask guessing game host to start the game. So this is where I ask the guessing game host to start the game. And it's going to think for a while.
I chose a number between 1 and 100. Can you guess it?
So it picked a secret number between 1 and 100 and it's asking me to guess it. And I'm going to guess it is 50.
I heard you guessed 50. The guess was too high. Try again.
So because it told me, Alexa told me the guess was too high, I'm going to now go from basically numbers 1 through 50. I'm going to choose the middle of that, so which is 25. So I'm going to say my guess is 25. Let's see what happens with that.
I heard you guess 25. The guess was too high. Try again.
So I'm going to keep guessing, sort of like zooming in the possible numbers.
I heard you guess 13. The guess was too high. Try again.
So let me guess now 6.
I heard you guessed 6. The guess was too low. Try again.
Let me guess 9.
I heard you guess 9. The guess was too low. Try again.
So let's guess 10.
I heard you guess 10. The guess was too low. Try again.
So we have only a few options left, so let's try 12. And
I heard you guess 12. The guess was too high. Try again.
So it must be 11, so let's give that.
I heard you guessed 11. Congratulations. You got it.
Alrighty, so that's the number guessing game. Seen an example of what the number guessing game is. We're going to learn how to create this in the Alexa coding environment of MIT App Inventor. Now you have the number guesser starter project, so please open that, and when you open that you'll come to a screen like that. Now what you're going to see initially is the good old App Inventor coding environment that you are already very familiar with blocks and the designer. What we're going to do is we're going to add a skill, an Alexa skill, and this is going to be the name of the skill. When we say the invocation name, we're talking about basically how do you call that skill, how do you ask Alexa to invoke that skill. And we're going to call this skill, the invocation name is going to be guessing game host. Okay, so that's going to be our invocation name. It will bring us to a new page, and you're going to notice the designer looks a little bit different. It has the Amazon Echo Dot here. The components are gone, and instead there are some other things here. Now the important thing to note is in the regular MIT App Inventor, what you're basically building is what is called the graphical user interface. So all these components you're dragging and dropping are components that visually create an interface for the user to interact with. Now when you go to the Alexa coding interface, what you're going to create is what is called the voice user interface, VUI. And in order to create the VUI, you need these options here, these component things here. And the first one is called an intent, and I'll explain to you in a second what an intent is. So let's grab and drag and drop an intent, and let's rename the intent the start intent. Okay, now what is an intent in Alexa? Now, there might be many ways of asking Alexa the same question. Let's say you're trying to reach a particular information. You could ask it one way or another. And this is also true in daily life. Let's say you want your kids to wash the dishes. You might tell them, wash the dishes, please. You might tell them, clean up the dishes. You might say, tidy up the dishes. There might be different ways you really mean that you want the dishes to be cleaned. And this is exactly the same idea for the intents in Alexa. So let's define the start intent. And when you look at its properties, you're going to notice there are a bunch of options here. One of them is the utterances text box. So I'm going to put here an utterance. I'm going to say start the game. So when the utterance start the game is uttered, Alexa is going to understand that to be the start intent. Let's put another option here. You might say begin the game. That could be another identical way of saying that. Or you might just say start or begin. Okay? And you could add here more utterances. But I'm going to just give 4 utterances that amount to the same intent, which is basically we're asking the guessing game host to start the game. Okay? Now, when you're done with your utterances, if you notice, like I have here an empty utterance, App Inventor will not like that. So make sure you remove any empty utterances that you see. Okay? So here is our start intent. Now we're going to go to blocks, and we're going to define what happens if that start intent has been spoken. Now, before I do that, I would like to quickly define 2 variables. The first variable I'm going to call it, the first global variable I'm going to call it secret. So this is the secret number that Alexa guessing game host is going to pick. Initially, I'm going to make it 0, but then it's going to be a random number between 1 and 100. And then let's define another variable, and let's call it max. This is going to be the maximum value that you're going to have as possible to guess. I'm going to put there 100. So these are my 2 global variables, the initializations of those. Now, when you click on the start intent, you're going to notice that there's an event handler there that says when start intent is spoken, and I'm just going to remind you what utterances amount to that. Start the game, begin the game, start, begin. These are all different ways of basically saying the same thing, which we are saying we would like the game to start. So when the start intent is spoken, the first thing we would like to do is pick the secret number. So we set the variable secret to a random number, random integer between 0 and, now this is 100 here, but I'm going to make it the max value that we have, so that if we later change our mind and we want the game to be, I don't know, between 1 and 50, we don't have to change it everywhere. So first, the guessing game host is going to pick a secret number, and then it's going to tell us, it's going to ask us, so let's do that. It's going to ask us, I chose a number between 1 and 100, do you want to guess? So we're going to create a sentence that sort of is going to have a join block with several sockets. So let's create at least 3 and see where we go. So we can say something like, I chose a number between 1 and, now this is going to be between 1 and the maximum value that we are allowing. So in this case, 100. So I chose a number between 1 and 100, and then let's invite the user to guess it. So let's actually put a period, leave a space. Can you guess it? Okay. Now observe that I have an ask block here. An ask block is a nice special block in Alexa coding environment where once Alexa asks a specific question, it is basically waiting for the user to respond in some way. Okay? So Alexa is now going to ask, can you guess this number? Now the user is going to respond with another bunch of utterances that all amount to a specific intent, which basically is the guessing intent. So let's pull another intent, drag and drop there, and then let's rename this make guess intent. Okay, and observe that kind of like in the case of regular App Inventor, when you're building a graphical user interface, when you name a button, you call it, start button or submit button. You end the name of the component with the type of component you're using, so that you remember. So we end up doing the same thing here. We say make guess, and then we end the word intent, so we always remember that this is an intent. Now for utterances, we could say something like my guess is. Now when the user utters, my guess is 57, that number has to be captured by Alexa. Okay. Now the way we capture numbers or different variables is by using what is called a slot. So I'm going to grab a slot, drag and drop it here, and let's rename the slot as my guess slot. Again, I'm ending with the word slot so I remember what this is for. And basically this is going to be a number I'm going to enter. So I go to slot type. There are many different types here. You got to make sure that you select the correct type. In our case, it's a number. Now when you go to make guess intent, you're going to notice this there's a slot button here. So we can say my guess is, and when you're done, you just click the button my guess slot. It automatically brings the slot where the numerical value uttered by the user is going to be captured. Okay, so this is one way we could ask, we could make a guess. Another one, we could just say simply, it is, and then, my guess slot. So that's another option. We could say something like, is it, and then get the my guess slot. Observe, if I want to put a question mark at the end of this sentence that looks like a question, is it, Alexa is not going to allow me to do that. Okay, so it's okay. You can still say, is it 57, but you'll not be allowed to enter into the utterance a question mark. And then finally, it's possible that my answer is simply 57 without saying my guess is. So I'm just going to have my guess slot as a single utterance, and that should be acceptable. Okay, so I add that, and again I notice at the end I have an empty utterance. I remove that to avoid any problems. Now what we're going to do is we just go back to the blocks and decide what to do when make guess intent is spoken. Okay, now let's actually do that. So you go to make guess intent. When make guess intent is spoken, now let's think this through. What's going to happen? So the user is going to say something like my guess is 57. And what we would like to do, and I think it's always a good habit in the case of Alexa programming, is Alexa should repeat what she heard. Okay, because sometimes maybe there was a problem with you said something, Alexa heard something. So let's start with a statement that says I heard, so let's again have a join statement. You could say, I heard that your guess is, and now we can go to my guess slot here, and we want to grab the value that is entered into here by the user. So in this case, it would be something like 57. So I heard that your guess is blah. I personally like to put a pause after you say something. Don't make it too long, then it becomes a lot of waiting. But let's pause for a second. And then now we have to make a decision here. So if the number given by the user is too high, Alexa has to say, oh, your guess is too high, so that the user can guess again. If it is too low, Alexa must say it's too low. And if it is exactly correct, Alexa will congratulate the user for guessing the number correctly. So you can see where this is going. We obviously need a long conditional here. So I'm going to grab an if then else block, because we have three options here. And I'm going to select a comparator in math blocks. The first one, I'm going to make that to be a greater than symbol. Okay. So what we want to say is if the guessed value is larger than the secret value. So you see I go over secret, I hover over that, and I get a get global secret block. So if the guessed value is too high, Alexa is going to invite the person to make a new guess, but also will inform them that the guess was too high. So clearly we're going to need a join option here. Actually, let me think about that. No, we don't need one. You just need to say something like your guess was too high. And then you want to invite them to guess again. So try again. Okay, so try to guess again. All right, now, so this is the greater than conditional. We can actually do the second part by copy pasting all of this. So if the guessed value is less than the global secret, then this time you want to tell them, oh, your guess was too low. Okay. Alrighty. Now the last option here is when the user correctly guessed the secret number. In that case, we can just have a say button that says something like congratulations, congratulations, you got it. Okay. Alrighty, so this is our logic. So we basically created a voice-driven user interface when particular intents are spoken, and then Alexa knows how to respond to them. Okay? So this is the point where we go back to make sure everything looks good. Now, if you haven't created an Amazon developer account, there was a setup option here. It tells you, to look at some document, how to create an Alexa developer account. It also has, I believe, a link to a YouTube video where these instructions are shared.
Selling online with Shopify.
I'm just going to stop that. So you could choose either of these. So I'm going to assume in this tutorial that you have already set up your Amazon account. If you did, there's going to be a login option there. Press that. When you press that, it's going to give you, it's going to ask you what's your password, etc. when you're ready, the send updates button here is going to be available, and when I click on that, it is going to start sending all of the code that I have to Alexa developer environment. And this is the part of the project that is going to take some time, so be patient with yourself. It is going to, first of all, if you're on the right track, give you a preview that your skill is updated successfully on Amazon. Even after this shows up, you have to wait about maybe 1 or 2 minutes for all of the details to be communicated. And when everything is done, we're going to see on the right side in the testing panel here, it is going to become white, and it is going to wait for an input. Now, while we're waiting, I should say it is probably a good idea in your coding as you're building the voice user interface to at each stage do a testing. So when I had here, for example, the start intent, I coded the first event handler for that. At the end of that, actually, I could have done a testing, and this probably is is a good idea, so that you can check that that part is working. Now you could move on. Now observe the interface here turned white. It is basically waiting for me to enter some utterances. So I'm going to make an invocation. I'm going to say ask guessing game host to start the game. Now, if you were using a real Amazon Echo device, you would have to actually say something like, Alexa, ask guessing game host to start the game. Okay, but because we are already in an Alexa development environment, you don't have to use the words Alexa, and you have to use the guessing game host invocation only once, because the context is clear. Okay, but if you're using a real Amazon device, Alexa device that is tied to your developer account, you're gonna have to repeat, Alexa, ask guessing game host to do this, do that, etc. So let's send this and let's see what result we're gonna get. Ask guessing game host to start the game.
I chose a number between 1 and 100. Can you guess it?
Okay, so that part is looking good. And then I'm going to enter something like, so this is going to be my, make guess intent. I'm going to say something like, my guess is 50. Okay, so I send this, and it's going to think for a while, and it's going to tell us where does it stand.
I heard that your guess is 50. Your guess was too low. Try to guess again.
So I'm going to just say, remember, you could just put the guess here without even forming a sentence. I'm going to say 75. Let's see what happens.
I heard that your guess is 75. Your guess was too low. Try to guess again.
I'm going to say, is it 90?
I heard that your guess is 90. Your guess was too low. Try to guess again.
I'm going to guess 95. Let's see if we get lucky here.
I heard that your guess is 95. Your guess was too low. Try to guess again.
Wow, I wonder what this number is. 98?
I heard that your guess is 98. Your guess was too low. Try to guess again.
Oh, wow. So we have only a few options left here. I'll try 99.
I heard that your guess is 99. Congratulations. You got it.
Okay. Now, it's interesting. I went through this game, and every time I guessed the number, because the secret number was 99, everything was too low. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to ask the guessing game host to start the game again. So I'm just going to copy paste this so I don't have to type that again. I'm going to ask the guessing game host to start the game. Oops, I misspelled it, so it's not gonna like that. So it's gonna probably say,
Sorry, I don't know about that. Please try again.
okay, so let me paste it again, but let me put it correctly. So let's see what it's gonna say. Ask guessing game host to start the game.
Sorry, I don't know about that. Please try again.
I think what's happening is it's not liking that I'm using the invocation name again. All I have to do is actually make the utterance. So start the game. Let's try that.
I chose a number between 1 and 100. Can you guess it?
Now what I'm going to do is in all of these trials here, every time we got the answer too low. Okay, so I know that the too low part of this condition is working fine. So what I want to do is I really want to give it a very high guess so that I want it to complain that the guess is too high. Okay, so I'm just going to put here my guess is let's put 100. Okay, so I send it. And then this will tell us if the,
I heard that your guess is 100. Your guess was too high. Try to guess again.
Okay. So just wanted to check the case, that the greater than case is also being detected. Okay. So here it is. Here it is. It's a fairly complicated, project. There are two intents. For each intent, you are defining multiple utterances. One of the intents actually needs to capture the numerical information given by the user. Thus, we are using what is called a slot. Slots are basically like variables. That's how Alexa will capture, information from the user. In this case, numerical information. Okay. And then, some decisions are made, and depending on what the intent spoken by the user is, Alexa makes some, appropriate responses. All right. So this is a fairly sophisticated project, and congratulations for, doing along with me. Now, if you look at the expand your app panel here, it gives you some interesting ideas about how to make this project, even more interesting, and how to, branch out a little bit more. Now, the most fascinating suggestion here is it's inviting you to create a version of this game where the role of the guesser and the player, the host and the player are changed. So in this case, Alexa is the host, and you're making guesses, and Alexa is telling you too high, too low, or you got it. But imagine a situation where you are the host, so you are the one picking the numbers 1 through 100, and Alexa has to cleverly navigate based on the answers you give her, too high, too low. How does she zoom in and get your guess? So that's a really, really interesting, challenging, but fun next project to create, following this number guessing game tutorial. Okay. So welcome to voice user interfaces. They're a lot of fun. That's really, a lot of artificial intelligence in the future is going to be, voice driven. So this is, a wonderful, introduction to voice user interfaces. We hope you had a great time. All the best. Take care.